Welcome to our final episode of LeadHership, the Forum's first female-centered program. This year at the Forum, we celebrated International Women's Day by looking at some of the amazing women who have been working really hard and leading and campaigning to make our world better, greener, and fairer. Our final guest on the program is nothing short of revolutionary. She has been a vocal activist and advocate for equality for all, Vidya Dinker. Vidya, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thanks, Nadine. It's my pleasure.
So, Vidya, you've been a lifelong activist now. How did you get into activism?
If I had planned my life, I don't think I would ever be an activist. So I used to be like this sort of nosy young person. So anything happening around me, I would respond to. I remember we were once on this 3-day long train journey in the middle of the summer, and it was really, really hot. And the whole train had no water. And all the adults on the train were just making do. Nobody was making a fuss. And I was so angry. I remember getting off at a station and going to the station master and saying, our train has no water for the last 3 hours. And can't you do something? And he thought this is like a young girl. I must have been 10. And I think he just was indulgent and he said, okay, write a complaint, never thinking that I actually would. And I remember very righteously pulling his book and writing in a full complaint. And voila, at the next station, the whole train was cleaned up. Water was filled across all the bathrooms and the wash basins, and nobody knew it was me, but I knew, right? So I think pretty early on, I figured that if you speak up, you can make some change. And therefore, that was a cycle that continued. I remember this. I'm sure there were other incidents that would have formulated that kind of confidence. If you do something, you can maybe bring about a change. So I remember the river, and I came straight back to his office and said, what is this happening? And he said, oh, it's the government reclaiming the river. I remember having this long argument with the senior Indian Administrative Service officer. And finally, the mud dumping stopped. And even now, I think 25 years later, when I pass the river, it's still free of any encumbrances. So I used to do this kind of thing, but it was like just like a flash in the pan here, there, etc. And I think the first time that I sort of consistently started doing it as part of a group was because there was this group focused on an ADB, actually assisted project, loan project in my city, which was an urban infrastructure project. And I got very involved. So that is 21 years ago. 2000, yeah, 2000, and we began pushing. And because I was young and sort of quite naive also, the group would get pushed into places that they would never actually have occupied until then. So I remember this incident where the next morning, I saw my name in the paper as a young female activist, you know, and I made headlines because I had pushed this really senior managing director of KUIDFC, which is like the umbrella body that looks into any kind of foreign IFI projects in the whole state. And he had come to the Chamber of Commerce to basically brag about how well the ADB assisted loan project was going. And I had asked some very uncomfortable questions and he didn't know how to answer. And he said, oh, let's, because, you know, it was a Chamber of Commerce event, you have a formal thing and then you have dinner with drinks. And he said, oh, young lady, why don't we discuss this over the drink afterwards? He didn't want anything too serious. And the next day, the papers had it flash saying young female activist asked to drink or something like that by MD of KUIDFC. And after that, they consistently got bad press. And then I saw that very often when something was being talked of, I was being termed as an activist. So it wasn't planned, it just happened. And over the years, it's just a label that is stuck because I do not know of any other term that would communicate simply what I am or what I do to people. So I would have liked dreamer of a better world or something like that. But for now, activist.
That is a brilliant answer. I was just nodding vigorously at your story. I loved it so much. So Vidya, you talked a lot about being a female activist. Should we call ourselves female activists, or are we just activists?
We are just activists. And I'm not even sure, as I said, about this term activist, I think that because we live in where we live, we just need to keep pushing so that things are better, right? It is just something we should do because we exist. There's no other way. So I don't even know if we should be called activists, but definitely not just female activists. This is how the paper had put me down that day, but because they wanted to, I think, juxtapose a very senior IAS officer with a young sort of rabid activist. But and because there was liquor involved. So, our countries, the way they look at this is quite different, skewed. So it's sensational journalism. But normally, no, just an activist. And I think we being female biologically is just like anything. So I could be trans, I could be male, female, whatever. It shouldn't bother you. What I'm saying and what I am trying to get you to focus on is what should be important.
Great, thank you, Vidya. So, there's a lot of the leading global campaigners are female identified. And in fact, there's actually a new wave as well in feminism labeled as the ecofeminism, right? Is saving the planet then women's work?
Saving, it's saving our own ass, right? There's no other way to say it. So I think everyone should be part of this battle. We're all in this together. And so that the boat doesn't sink, and it is sinking so damn fast, I think everyone needs to put in their bit. And that's what women, especially young women, I think the hope is that there are so many young, feisty women coming up, speaking out, fighting, not just for their own, future, but for our collective futures. And I think that is really, really invigorating, even for older activists such as myself. I think the hope is with the young people, whether male or female, but really the young female, I'm again saying female activists, but the young girls out there speaking up is really heartwarming and very invigorating.
Thanks, Vidya. And, as well as being women's work, activism has definitely changed in the last couple of years. And social media has made it both a hyper-visible thing and accessible for a lot of people to voice their concerns on social media, and as well as their opinions. So how has social media changed the way you do things, and has it necessarily changed it for the better?
So interestingly, I'm a little social media shy, right? I'm in my element when I'm one-on-one with people. That's when I really perform much better. I can push people, I can get people to listen to me, etc. So I'm better face to face. But so I don't do much of Facebooking. I am on Facebook, but that's already on its way out. And Insta and the other things I'm not so active on. I just got onto Twitter and I'm not really active on it. But one thing that happened during the lockdown, for example, I realized, and I discussed with my friend who's also IC from South Asia with the forum, that suddenly we have a level playing field. Normally, look, I'm a volunteer, right? I don't get paid for what I do. But normally I or groups like his, that is a small NGO unit, would never have the kind of money and wherewithal to organize, a big coming together of activists to discuss and plan and do a concerted campaign together. And suddenly, because of COVID and everyone being grounded and Zoom opening up so many possibilities and so much of social media interaction being possible on the net, I remember having this discussion one lazy afternoon and saying, why don't we start having our own webinars, etc. And he latched onto it and we began this together. And I think it was fantastic the way activists across the world and other people responded, and we got voices from the ground. The fact that internet is now on most people's phones made it possible for us to listen in to community voices and to bring those community voices without any extra cost to people across the globe. So I think that really opened me up to the possibilities of social media and how it can bring people together with a common cause.
Vidya, you talked about a level playing field, which is really interesting. Does that level playing field also extends, for example, to activists in the global north and the global south? And can there be ever transnational solidarity between activists in the global north and the global south?
There can be and there should be, but I don't think it's a level playing field yet between the, even if there are so many wonderful activists in the north and the south. But the fact that a lot of the wherewithal in terms of resources is with the global north, I think the global south has to sort of not just retain space, but create that space much more. So I'm looking forward actually to working a lot more with people in the global south to sort of expand that space in the global sphere on the climate crisis and other things that are hitting us so hard. And getting global north activists to not lead that kind of talk, but actually to be supportive allies on that. So I don't think we're there yet. We're a long way from it, but I hope we will get there someday.
Shift our attention now to particularly human rights and the work that has been done by multilateral development banks. Now, you and I, we've talked before about safeguard policies and the update of the Asian development banks and so on and so forth. As you know as well, human rights articles are rarely referred to in multilateral development banks.
Articles? Human rights articles.
Yeah, human rights articles are rarely referred to by multilateral development banks. Why do you think this is? And are human rights political in nature?
Human rights are political in nature. They are difficult for money bags to really think of. So every project is sort of looked on with its engineering scope, and it's like, oh, we will make the world better, we will get drinking water to women and this and that. So it's all a lot of talk, but human rights begins with actually respecting the individuals that you want this project to work better for, and actually sort of working with them to see what they actually need and how it can be given to them in the best possible manner. So that means talking to them pretty early on in the project, taking them along. So everything that is sort of top managed and planned becomes problematic and a human rights disaster very often. I see this Bangalore Metro project that we are looking at, or even the Kolkata Environmental Improvement Investment Program in Calcutta. And it's been, a thorough violation of human rights on so many levels. And how has that happened? Because women, street vendors, people directly impacted by the project in Bangalore Metro, a technical training institute for the deaf, which was a residential facility, was just displaced, even though they weren't working on that particular metro station right away. They first demolished the building, but they demolished the entire career and hopes and dreams and aspirations of those deaf students. And that is something that they're getting away with. So I think finally, every project needs this human rights lens. It can be political, but it's a rights issue. And it is something that needs to be taken so seriously, and people need to be the center of any project. And I think that gets lost when big IFIs are planning projects just with governments, member countries, etc. Somehow the human element, the fact that it deals with people, and these people's voices need to be heard, they need to be consulted. So a proper consultation, not the kind of, consultation that people do to put in their reports so things look hunky-dory, but proper consultation where you listen to people, you find out what their issue really is, what needs to be focused on and how. Then I think we have less trouble. Of course, the fact that you're paying, countries are actually paying with interest and paying off these loans is something that is hardly considered. It's considered as something being given away gratis. I remember very early on in 2000s that we began speaking here that Mangalore city, where I live, the city corporation shouldn't pay back this ADB loan because, it's not really a successful loan. There's so many things that have gone wrong, etc. And I remember I really pushed and pulled, and I got the country director here. I was thinking, now we'll get them by the scruff of the neck. And I grandly said in the meeting, oh, we will not pay you back. Because we don't think this has worked. And we had got the mayor and other important people also there in the meeting supporting what we were saying. And very coolly, the ADB country director said, oh, but we don't care even if your city doesn't pay back. It's the Indian government that's the sovereign guarantee. And I remember 21 years ago, it sort of hit me. Oh, I'm powerless in this. This just happens at a level that we cannot even think of influencing. And that was quite disheartening. But we push on, and we hope that our governments will have to listen to us, and that ultimately even IFIs will have to listen to the people, because otherwise they're completely redundant.
Particularly because you said, yes, they are political nature, and of course there is a bit of politics involved in human rights. So does that mean then that, for example, if we as activists and as NGOs go on and push for a stronger safeguards, right, that makes reference to stronger human rights conventions and treaties, will that then mean that, for example, countries that are human rights violators can then refuse, for example, to take loans or to seek loans from, stronger safeguards enforcers, and then ultimately shift the playing field towards banks, which are a little bit of a lagging in that sense, in the safeguard sense. What's your opinion on that?
So that might well happen. Sorry, there was a beep. Sorry, I'll start again. That may well happen, Nadine, but I don't have any problem with it, because, for example, some of the big banks try to play holier than thou as development banks. And that's how people in my country, for example, understand them. They think the World Bank and the ADB and others are doing a fantastic job of helping people. They do not realize that they are ultimately just banks, and that if they want to do something in our countries, they must keep to country standards, yes, but they must also set their own standards pretty high. So, governments that are shamelessly undemocratic must not get this kind of funding. That's very clear. And banks that shamelessly do not keep to international human rights conventions or standards, well, they need to be unmasked. And I think that's our task, to unmask these banks that position themselves as giving money to help people, but actually contributing to governments that are anti-people, being more oppressive in several ways, and just some greenwashing or some color washing of their own intentions. So I think everyone should be exposed. And I think it's our business, Nadine, you and I and others like us need to call out both these governments, even if they are our governments, and these banks.
That is a risky call, Vidya.
It is what it is. We shouldn't sugarcoat life, This is what it is. And let it be exposed to everyone, and people can make their own decisions. So I think we shouldn't sort of pussyfoot on exposing things or thinking that this can go badly. I think our duty first is to call out people, speak the truth openly and to power. And I think we will fail ourselves, because most of us do this because we do it for ourselves, because our own inner calling sort of tells us that, this, speak it out, take it to more people. And I think that is what we should focus on, that what we know as the truth needs to go out there to people so that people can then decide what they want to do with this information. We ask banks to be accountable to people by giving free, prior, informed, having these consultations where they get consent from people. I think the people need to know everything. And I think like in our own countries, we talk of the right to information and therefore the freedom of expression. We speak up against our own governments that try to suppress information or suppress people who would be expressing themselves openly. I think we should not sort of tailor make our speech depending on where things will go. I think we should say it. We should say it openly and trust that the people will decide what is best for them and how to go about things.
That's a really good advice, Vidya. So as a female identified and an activist, I just wanted to circle back to your career journey and really kind of highlight some of the challenges that you face in comparison to, for example, your male counterparts. I would love if you can share with us some of that.
Nadine, earlier I told you about how I pushed and pulled, and we got the country director of the ADB to come to our city for the first time to answer our questions. So before that, I had to make a trip to Manila to actually sort of showcase how badly the project was going and that their reports were not reflecting the reality. And I think it was the NGO Forum who had helped me make the trip. I can't remember. It's 21 years. And I remember that when I landed there, I got a call from my husband in panic because there was very bad press, apparently. And the press and quite a few newspapers in Kannada, the vernacular language here, and in English had said, activist goes on foreign junket. Okay, so suddenly they didn't say the truth, and yet they put a little bit out and positioned it in a way that when I came back, I was like in boiling hot water, and all I had done was try and ensure that, what the people were experiencing in my city would go up there. And I had meetings with those important people, and I managed to get some results and some change. But this is the way it was positioned, So I think time and again, we come across these things, being people, especially men, older men, being condescending, you not being taken too seriously. If you decide to be well turned out, then thinking, oh, she's not serious. That's especially true in India, okay? So things like that keep coming at you. But you know, because you've grown up a woman, so if I had grown up a man and then become a woman, I think I would have found it very difficult to deal with. But because I grew up as a girl, taking this all in and absorbing it and sort of becoming stronger despite all of it, I think I can take it, you know? So even as an activist, and I'm a pretty like vociferous, assertive kind of activist. There are some women who are activists and not as assertive as me, and I think they find it difficult. But despite my assertiveness, I do get, you know, all this kind of thing coming towards me. And when I'm assertive, they don't even expect a woman to be assertive. You know, you have to be very nice and sweet and say your thing, but say it in a very, you know, in a manner which is acceptable for. So even the way you talk and walk and behave has to keep to their small little box. And I always like to push that box a little, which means that I'm constantly in trouble, right? But I enjoy it. I enjoy shocking a few people. I am known to be very contrary in my own town, and people wonder how my husband can have anything to do with me and how we've managed to live together for 22 years. They're always expressing sympathies on the poor man. But as contrary as I am, I enjoy being myself. And I think that finally gets me through. The fact that I enjoy being with myself and being myself is so important, whatever we do, whether we are an activist or a cleaner on the street, whatever.
Wow. So what advice then, so obviously it seemed like, you faced a few bumps in the road in your journey. Is this a career that you would recommend to women? And if so, what advice would you give the women and girls who are watching us here and aspire to reach that same level of assertiveness in their advocacy?
So, I mean, through COVID, everybody has been telling us about how women-led countries have fared better. So I really do believe that when women are in charge, things go better for everyone, not just for women. So they do really have a more expansive world vision. And I think the kind of leadership that women give is so much more supportive, where you take everyone along rather than lead from the front and only I will speak. And that's typically male, right? So it's like mentally they're on a high horse every time, brandishing their sword and being so like, oh, I am the leader and listen to me types. But women, I have found, even assertive women who can be termed by some people as, oh, you're the man in the room, as if like, so even women like me, I think when they take up leadership, they do think of more things, more people, and taking more people along. So it's not so competitive when it's women. It's more collaborative and cooperation. The thing that got the human race where it is today is what we focus on, I think. And so that kind of leadership that nurtures, whether fiercely or softly, is, I think, what the world needs. And a sort of longer term vision, not short term gains, but a longer sort of horizon on everything where everyone sort of moves along. So, so my advice to women is you don't necessarily have to be as in the face and assertive as I am perhaps, or a few others, but you need to be quietly confident at all times. The world could be battering you down, because in my culture, and I'm sure with many cultures in the global South, women are quite often told, oh, don't do this, don't do that, don't sit this way, don't climb a tree, don't don't step out in the dark. So it's all the don'ts being put into our heads throughout, so that we also become so self-conscious and so self-censorious of ourselves, so we are constantly censoring ourselves Oh, was my voice too shrill when I was talking this? Oh, did anyone listen to me? And you know, there are so many self-doubts that just growing up as a girl puts into your head that we are a damn mess here. And I think it helps us understand that other women's heads are mess too. And therefore, we are more nurturing, as in we actually listen when women talk. And women, when they feel that they are being listened to, make a lot of sense because, as I said, they have this more expanded view where more people are accommodated. I think that itself, to see that women are in charge so that they listen to other women, they pick up from the wisdom of other women, they have the, and once women take up any kind of cause, they see it to the logical end, Nadine. I've seen that time and again. Men will give up. They want the quick and dirty, and they don't want to stay the long course. But women, once they bite into something, they will see that it goes to its logical conclusion. And very often it's a very positive conclusion. So in one way or another, you might not win the battle that you're doing with the big Goliath, but you will actually win the battle of seeing that there is like a second tier of leadership. You've nurtured the whole community into confidence that everyone is a leader in that community. It's not just that woman. So that kind of thing, there will be so many positives that we need to see that woman power is actually there. And I think the power need not be loud and brash, but quiet and confident and nurturing and supportive. So I think it's fantastic how NGO Forum has sort of started this LeadHership program. And I think it augurs very well for the future of the forum, that we're going to put women right up there, front and center. And I think these voices that you're bringing together is just fantastic, because these are voices that have spoken up on behalf of their communities. Right, Nadine? Each of these voices have exercised leadership, not for herself, but for community voices being brought up, and community voices to go and batter down the fortresses of IFIs, you know. So these women you've spoken to are really battering rams that open up the gates of the fort, where the communities can really march in and say their bit. And I think that celebrating that kind of leadership that does it on behalf of others with a true groundedness that these women bring is fantastic. Thank you for doing this. And looking forward to working with all of you to see that more voices from women and men come through more strongly and really bring down the banks to talk eye to eye with us and to respond more openly to our issues and concerns.